Well, after all this time, it's finally time to start picking blueberries. We spent all year long taking care of the plant, looking after it, meeting its needs, and now it's time for that plant to start taking care of us. Now this blueberry plant and this whole row of blueberries was just picked a couple of days ago, and guess what? It's time to pick them again. And that's the way blueberries are. Once they finally get started producing, you're going to need to pick at least once a week until those berries are finally gone. But what do we do with all these blueberries? In this field are hundreds and hundreds of gallons of blueberries. So we're going to start producing some videos that have to do with preserving blueberries and putting them up for later. Or right there in the middle of winter time, be able to have some blueberry pancakes. There's just nothing better than that. So I think it's time for us to head to the kitchen and see what we can do to save these for later. In the first of this series of videos on how to put up blueberries for later, we're going to just start with the very basic. We're going to freeze them. Now there are two ways that I like to freeze these things. One, so that you can use them immediately, and two, so you can have them for later. You know, one of the favorite things around the berry house is to eat frozen blueberries. To be able to just reach into the freezer, have them in a little bag, and you can pull out handfuls of them and have them right there. So here's how I do that. One, all the berries are always washed before they go into the freezer. I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but there are things living out there in that field, and you just as soon not put them up in your freezer. So step one is I'm going to take these berries that we washed, and I'm going to put them into another pan. Now the key to this is to put them in the pan and roll them around to where they're not touching each other. Now we're off to the freezer. Now once we've got that part of the process done, now it's time to just put them in a baggie and toss them in the freezer. And I think you can see these things are pretty tough. And I have to tell you, they're really good too. I do like to try and push the air out of them if I can. These are going in the freezer, and you're going to be able to reach in and just pull out small little bits of them at a time. They will not stick back together. Now this next way of putting the berries up is the way I like to do it when it's probably going to be quite a few months before I use them. Whether we're going to be baking it up in a pie or making some ice cream later on, or whatever it is we might be doing. I do like to use a vacuum sealer whenever possible. And if you don't have one of these, that's okay. I got a little trick that will help you get the air out of the bag, and I'll show it to you before we get done. When I freeze berries like this, I like to know how much is going in each bag. So I will mark it and put down the number of cups that I'm putting in there. This particular bag is going to be 2 cups of blueberries. There we have it. 2 cups of blueberries, and they're ready for the freezer. Before I had my vacuum sealer, I had another little trick that I used to help get the excess air out of the bags. I took a pot like this and put water in it. Then put the berries in the bag just like I always did. So you take the bag and you push it down into the water, and that's going to force a lot of air out of the bag as you push it down. And before you pull it back out, seal the bag. And that's removed a fair amount of air from the bag. This is ready to go into the freezer. Now I know there are a lot of tricks out there for doing this, and if you've got one, how about posting it on the website and share it with everybody? Well, that should take care of the first segment on putting up blueberries. I think you can see that if you freeze them, it actually lets you put them up in other ways later. Sometimes freezing is just a really good temporary place to put those berries. But we've got a lot of other ways to put those up for later and to store them, sometimes without using any refrigeration. We're going to be talking about dehydrating them. We're going to be talking about turning them into syrup, which can stay in the fridge and stay for quite a long time. We're going to be talking about canning them, which will stay for a very, very long time. And one of my favorites, and I'm going to be really looking forward to this, we're going to look at storing up blueberries for later in the form of wine. So stick with me while we go through this. It's going to be fun.